It's that time once again. 3 of your most beloved childhood movies are about to be twisted into terrifying horror posters. Our gruesome adventure begins with arguably one of the best animated films in history, Shark Tale. And unfortunately, for our little fishy pal Oscar here, tonight, he's the catch off the day. First off, let's bin the background. Then I'll make a quick selection around his head so we can give him that slightly eerie head tilt. And unfortunately for Oscar, I'm about to slice open his torso so we can reveal that fishy skeleton underneath. Now, let's make it way more gruesome. I'm grabbing this fleshy texture and dropping it into the peeled skin selection. Then with a quick saturation and exposure tweak, we can paint in some shadows and highlights to get that 3D fold effect. And a quick shadow underneath, and we'll just copy it over to the other side and then darken the ribs for some extra depth. After scooping out Oscar's eyes, I decided to go with these black demonic ones, although I'll be changing them in just a sec. Now for the mouth. I don't know about you, but I definitely wouldn't have this big smiley grin on my face if half my ribs were on show. So initially I thought I would be cheeky and use a little bit of generative fill to remove this big old cheesy grin. However, we might have to go a little bit old school for this one. I simply smothered his mouth with the same skin grabs from his face, so hopefully now the generative fill should actually work. Nice. Next, let's swap out these black demon eyes for some white ones, almost like his eyes have rolled to the back of his head. And as always, a quick shadow to finish them off. For the mouth, I found this image of Oscar, and even though it's a little low res, I'm going to use some shadows and highlights to bring back some of that detail. Time for a little fun touch. I'm going to place this rosemary plant in between his teeth as if it's been placed there right before serving. And while we're on the topic of being served up, let's slide a wooden tray underneath him, followed by this rusty metal table. And finally, let's add some shadows. Naturally, it only made sense that the ones feasting on him would be the sharks. So taking little Lenny's fin here, I'm going to work it into the composition. Something which I'm always quite aware about when designing is how I can make different elements interact with each other. So I'm going to tuck this fin under where Oscar's arm overlaps. Now our sharks are feeling a little civilized tonight, so we're going to give them some pieces of cutlery. Right, now I need you guys to tell me if I made the right choice here. So obviously we were going with this sort of rusty metal table background. However, when I tried this water image, it instantly just gave me such a more sort of Shark Tale vibe, so that's the direction I chose to go. Now, our design was nearly complete. However, as with every great meal, we needed to add a little sprinkle of garnish. I really think these salt granules made our little Oscar look like quite a tasty meal. Pause. Finally, with a couple little more light tweaks and some finishing touches, I present to you guys our horror take on Shark Tale. Would you eat this gruesome fish dish? Let me know in the comments. Leaving the lovely world of DreamWorks behind, we hop over to the British countryside, where we find our next unfortunate victim, none other than the iconic Peter Rabbit. As soon as I saw this poster design, I just knew I had to do something with it. Let's start by making a selection around the carrot so we can completely bin it off. Then I'm going to use Envato's 3D object catalogue so I can grab the perfect weapon. Let's spin it around until I've got the right angle. There'll be a link in the description if you guys want to sign up. Now we just need to ensure that the axe is lined up with the rabbit's hand and the fabric tie on the blade. Once in place, I'll quickly clean up this selection over the rabbit's arm. To rebuild the rest of the bag, I'll grab a selection of this fabric and drop it into place. And then let's just match the saturation. Finally, I'll repeat that process for the top selection so it all blends in nice and seamlessly. Next, we're bringing in this picture of Peter Rabbit and tragically cutting off his arm. I'll position it above the bag and use a puppet warp to make it droop naturally. A quick hue adjustment so it doesn't look like Peter's own arm, and we're good. Grabbing the top of Peter's head, I'm also going to drop this into the bag so it looks like a poor unfortunate rabbit's head has also found its way in. With the main composition in place, it was just a matter of going over each layer with a mix of shadows and highlights to give everything as much 3D depth as possible. To begin the background, I found this almost fairy tale-like landscape, which I imported on an empty canvas and used generative fill to expand the image. However, I wasn't quite happy with the sky, so I replaced it with this much more gloomy one. After a decrease in saturation, I'm going to add a small Gaussian blur to bring back the focus on our psychotic killer rabbit. For another touch of horror, I thought it'd be fun to... Maybe fun's not the right word. Interesting. Maybe it'll be interesting to hang a couple deceased rabbits from a clothing line. Do I need therapy? Probably. Anyways, a final pass of shadows makes them look much more lifelike. Oh boy. With some custom lighting worked in, it was time for the finishing touch, ketchup splatters. I'll set the blend mode to multiply, and while we're at it, let's stain the fur around his mouth too. After creating this absolute monstrosity, it only felt right to give our little rabbit eyes a sort of evil red tone. Finally, let's import the movie logo, however, we're going to give it a bit of a horror revamp with this gruesome texture and polish it off with a bold yellow stroke. After a few more finishing design elements, such as painting in some wounded skin on the hanging rabbits, I can finally be done with this one. I present to you my Peter Rabbit Horror Edition. Was this a mistake? Yes. I wish this was never created. Our last stop on this absolutely devastating ride, we're going to take on a Disney favourite for all you gamers, WreckIt Ralph. I'm starting with the main man himself, And the first move is to drop his saturation. Next, I'm adding a cracked texture image, and with an inverted layer mask, I'll paint the cracks over only his skin. My idea was to transform Ralph into an ancient, evil, bloodthirsty ice giant, and so overlaying this icy texture does the job pretty well. I wanted his eyebrows to look a bit more angrier, so I selected the brow, rotated it, and then used a patch off the skin underneath to cover up the old one. Once both eyebrows are sorted, I enlarged the selections for the eye sockets and dropped in the new imagery. I then realised that I hadn't actually reapplied the cracked skin around his eye, so I quickly reapplied the texture. After painting in some shadows and adding this glowing effect, I overlaid a series of bloodshot eye references, tweaking the blend mode so only the red veins remained. Perfect for reinforcing that evil vibe I was going for. Let's bring in this creepy mask image and keep only the mouth. By changing the blend mode, I can instantly make it blend into Ralph's icy skin tone. I'll then erase everything else, leaving just the key mouth details, and add these low exposure points to really push that realism. To keep that glowing effect consistent across the giant's face, I made a selection of the mouth gaps and added this white overlay with an outer glow. I thought that light shining from within was looking pretty cool. Now let's throw on some various ketchup splatters, as our little Ralphie boy here is quite the messy eater. Of course, every ice giant needs an ice cave, so I placed this image in the background and applied some lighting effects to have that outside view slightly glowing. For the logo, I decided to keep it white to blend in with our poster colour palette, however I have this red texture drooling over the top. After a few more lighting effects and refinements, here is my horror take on WreckIt Ralph. Don't think Fix It Felix, it should be coming by anytime soon. And so unfortunately, that concludes this episode of Movie Poster Redesigns. Let me know in the comments which one was your favourite. If you guys enjoyed this video, then why not check out my previous post where I took some clumsy cartoon characters and redesigned how their deaths might look if they were ultra realistic. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one in a bit.